Coming up this week on show 770, we'll be talking about Ifttt and the Ifttt Pro, which is going to take away a lot of stuff we're using from our smart home. And what does that mean for smart home users? Is it going to destroy what we've got all now? Are there alternatives? We'll be talking about all that. We're talking about the Apple events, a brief chat on that, on some of the devices that have been launching. We've got some Windows Insider news, new builds there, then pulled. We've got some information on London Tech Week that Gary's going to be talking about. Spectrum emulator, written in C#, and lots more. So let's get straight to Richard and Gary. Gary, Richard, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. And so very clear on your gigabit. Are you on gigabit, Richard?
Well, to the house I am. I'm actually sat in my shed at the end of my garden, and I've got a Cat 6 cable going to the house, and that's gigabit. That's lovely. Sadly, once it hits the street, it does drop down to 70. But it's the sort of thing that would have made Jason envious a year or so ago. But now, of course, you go, only 70.
70, is that it? Yeah, and that was because we were talking sort of offline before we were recording during the week about your best way of doing that. So did you in the end go for a gigabit switch?
I did in the end, yeah. I got a TP-Link AC1200, which I'll probably talk about more next week once I've had a bit more time to play with it. But yeah, I was looking at sort of a bargain basement, sort of ordinary 100 meg. I say ordinary 100 meg. 20 years ago, I'd have been very impressed with that. But in the end, you persuaded me to spend just a little bit more and go for the gigabit one, which I have to say I'm very impressed with so far. Taking my life in my hands, I've been running it now for 5 minutes. And this is the very first data that's flowing through its circuits, and so far it has been a case of plug it in and it has just worked. I'm quite impressed so far. It's much easier than these things used to be.
Yeah, they definitely are. The consumer devices.
Yeah. Did I mention my little project to do power over Ethernet to the garage? I'm not sure I've actually covered that.
Power over Ethernet. No, you didn't know, because we've done a lot of talking about Ethernet over power. But not...
Yeah, I think you did actually. Yeah, I think you did just mention powering some sort of camera type devices, type things using.
Yeah, so I was basically, I'm not sure if I actually went into detail what I did, but I've got in the garage that where I'm staying at the moment. There's 4 cameras, all who used to be on individual power supplies, and I switched those all out for a single power supply going into a 6 port PoE gigabit switch, which then sends out the power to those devices. But it's really clever because it's this new intelligent PoE standard, so it actually works out what power needs to go to each device. And so I've got a couple of the cameras are actually 12 volt, but 2 of the other cameras are 18 volt, and it actually works that out and it works out the power needs to send to them. So I think it's pretty clever, and it's really easy to install. Very, very, very neat installation, and it's certainly reduced the number of outages in the garage from power cables dropping out and wall warts wearing out, because the cheap wall warts you get with the particularly with the Chinese cameras are particularly prone to breaking. So this thing comes with a massive power transformer, which obviously can do 72 watts if it actually is pushed for it. So yeah, so pretty good little setup, but that was really easy to wire up. But yeah, we're all expanding into outbuildings. It's good.
Yeah, that's it. I was thinking about my greenhouse has currently got a few sensors in there, and the SwitchBot one. Actually, I still need to do a video of the SwitchBot because I've got the actual SwitchBots to. I think I showed this the other week, the little thing that comes out. But I've got one of the sensors in there, and I reviewed one a couple of weeks ago, which talked about that's 18 AAA batteries. So it was set to send an update every 5 minutes, and I changed it to every 10 minutes because that's the 2 options. But it's still, I would say, it's on 50% battery after 2 weeks, something like that. So it's not really sustainable. Whereas the SwitchBot one, I put it in 2 weeks later, but it's still on full, and it only takes 2 AAAs instead of 3. So it looks like the SwitchBot one more efficient. But I was thinking whether to put power into the greenhouse so I could put a camera in there. But of course, PoE is an easier way of putting power in there, because it's easy to wire.
True. Although I mean, I just said I remain immensely impressed by these Blink cameras that I've had for years now. They're still on the same batteries they had when they first came out the box.
Yeah, I've got a Blink actually. Yeah, and I think I've changed them once.
Yeah, the guys behind Blink are really clever.
Very, very clever. Certainly, yeah. I mean, obviously the base unit runs off, is plugged in, but the actual cameras themselves, they don't seem to be using any power. That's what I can't get over.
They do sip it. Yeah.
That's an option I could do, is just put a Blink camera in there. I mean, it'd be one of those things, I put the camera in there only just to see how things are, but I could just go and have a look. So it's not like a security concern.
Well, I mean, look, with the Blink camera, you can also just go into the Blink dashboard and then just turn on the camera and have a look.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But Garry, you might know this. I think there's still app limited on it. It's only on the app. There's no website. There's no web portal for it.
No, it's just app. Yeah, most of our cameras are.
Although if you're running your phone with the Android app,
yes, that would work. Yeah, that's actually a limitation of a lot of these PPTP based cameras. So they're basically point-to-point protocol. So they don't actually, most of the cameras which are battery powered don't have any sort of web host on them, so they're the web server, because that just drains power running that all the time. So they're effectively pinged to send a picture out. So they only start transmitting as soon as they've been woken up effectively to transmit. So that's how they get around some of this battery usage. Obviously, you don't want them online all the time, which is where Ian's sensors are probably falling down, because although even though it's transmitting only irregularly, they're still online.
Yeah,
stuck with Wi-Fi. So
I think that's why the switch bot is probably more efficient the way that they've done it. I was talking about the cameras. I'm still a big fan of the Arlo cameras. I just swapped the battery in the front door one. I think I did it 2 months ago. I've got two batteries and a dual charger. So all I do is take the flat one out, put it on charge, put the good one in, put the camera back. I'm charging the flat one now, so that in 3 months' time I've got one ready to swap, and it's really good. It works really good.
So are you still using that to trigger IFTTT, or was that too expensive for you now?
I actually heard the gears grinding then. That's amazing. We need more synchromesh in the show. More synchromesh, definitely.
Seamless. That is a seamless. That's better than a Mercedes AMG gearbox change, that then. I was using IFTTT with that, and I don't even seen. I think this was like last week. Last Thursday, they announced Ifttt Pro, which I thought, oh right, okay, maybe I'll have a look at that. I don't need extra features. I'm quite happy with everything is, so I'll just carry on. And then when I did look at it last night, I thought, hang on a minute, they're taking all my things away from me. And so this is what I read, and Garry, I'll let you go into more details. It seems to me that the Pro gives some nice stuff. It gives you multi-step applets with conditional logic, which is something I wanted a while ago. But the free version is going down to 3 applets only.
So these are 3 applets you have constructed. So if you use one of the applets which is generated by one of the service providers without changing it, so this is the key thing, they're talking custom applets. So you can have more than 3 applets, but you can't have more than 3 custom applets. Now the problem is virtually everybody uses custom applets. That's all the stuff you do, Ian, is probably custom applets. All the stuff I do is custom applets, and this was really just dumped on the world. It's sort of an announcement. Ifttt Pro's here. Oh, and also you can't have more than 3 custom applets without paying. Now I've got nothing against Ifttt trying to monetize. I mean, it costs a fortune to run services like this with the cloud storage, and cloud storage costs have been creeping up the last year or so. So I can see where they want to monetize, but they've already been monetizing off. We discussed this a few months back. They've been monetizing off the service providers, so of the manufacturers of the technology. I mean, that's why a few of the big names dropped out of that market and said, no, we're not going to do an IFTTT anymore, because they were starting to charge them substantial amounts of money to be on the platform. So it seems like they're wanting their cake and eating it here. They're charging the manufacturers, but they're also trying to charge the end user as well now. And there's a sort of a feeling, I think, that they have that free is enough for anybody, and you wouldn't want to use custom ones. You'd want to use these but everybody I talk to uses custom IFTTT, and virtually everybody I've talked to has found this a very unfortunate decision, because I think it's not so much the fact that they have made this decision, it's the fact that there was no pre-announcement on it. There was no warning this was going to come. So some people suddenly overnight found that they were limited to 3 custom controls, and things just stopped working. And I mean, this is just not the way you run things if people are depending on your service. I found that very, very unfortunate. I think this is a Garry rant, isn't it? It's not. But yeah, I think that that the way they did it. Now you see the Pro stuff they've actually announced. I would pay money for that if I was. But now I'm so put off IFTTT by the way they've actually handled this that I probably won't use it at all. I mean, I can write programs and run them on Azure Functions to do this rather than using IFTTT. I don't need all that stuff. All the APIs they use are public APIs. So most of the stuff they do, you can easily replicate yourself if you've got a bit of programming knowledge. So I think they're shooting themselves in the foot with this. I think if they'd come out and said, we're going to add these Pro features, it's going to cost this much, fine, the people would have done that. If they come out and said, look, we can't sustain this free model we've got anymore, at some point in the future, we're going to start charging you for your custom configurations. Here's what we're going to charge in 6 months' time. People might have been more accepting of that. There's still been a bit of pushback, but it would have been, you'd have managed it and you'd have looked for potential alternatives. I think now the one thing they have done is they've said you can set your own price, and I think most people are going to set the lowest price possible on this. Yeah, which is, I can't. Did you have that lowest pricing? So
yeah, it was $199 was the lowest you could set.
But they're suggesting you pay $9.99.
Yeah, and this is you've got to do this before October 20th, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, and then it doesn't say it, but it kind of what they're trying to say, if you read between the lines, is next year it will be $9.99. So you'll get 12 months at whatever level you set, and then it goes to $9.99.
Yeah, they're hoping you won't churn off, and I think, I mean, virtually everybody I've spoken to in the smart home industry who uses IFTTT has said, well, we need to start looking for alternatives. I think this has become a. Now, I'm not saying that should be free. I think that $1.99 a month is actually not an unreasonable cost. $9.99 a month is an unreasonable cost for most people for what they do with it. I think no, $9.99 for the Pro features, yes, but most people don't need the Pro features. They just want to run their applets they've already got. So I think they needed what they really needed to do if they were going to charge for the applets, they should have said up front that's what they were going to charge. They should have come up with a lower price model for that without the Pro features. That's my rant over, but that's where I am on this. I think for something which is the glue the industry has been working on, it's unfortunate. Now, and you had a really good Twitter exchange on this earlier, and I thought your point about one of the things which is an alternative to this now is Alexa routines.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, what I've been using them for, I've got a couple of non-smart home stuff and some smart home stuff. So I went through all my stuff today to see if I could replicate those services elsewhere. So for one, I have whenever the Windows Insider blog post is updated with a new build, I have a little alert that prompts me so I can go and check my machine. And I managed to replicate that with Zappo, which is a free service. So that's one ticked off. The other uses were all around the smart home, where I've got my Arlo cameras armed and disarmed depending on who's in the house using Live 360. I can almost replicate that if I install the Arlo app on the on each phone and use the geofencing options. So I can probably get away with that. The other one I was using is that if there's motion at the front door, I want it to flash the hue lights. Now, this theoretically should just be able to do as an Alexa routine. Now, I did set this up before and I tried it just before I came up and it didn't work, but I think that's an error rather than by design. On the Alexa app, you can have the Arlo cameras as a trigger. So when they detect motion, they then fire a scene. You can create a scene and you can turn lights off, and then you can also have it trigger another routine that has a delay on it. So in 5 minutes, it turns back off again. So I can pretty much replicate that through the Alexa routines. And actually, when I was looking through the Alexa routines, in theory, almost, or you could do everything in Alexa routines with a bit more flexibility with time zones and things like that. You just need the devices to be triggers in Alexa. So SwitchBot is, like what I was talking about before. That kind of thing could be used to open a vent in your greenhouse, whatever. Or if you've got a room where you're storing your wine, you can turn a heater on, or to keep the optimum temperature. That's the kind of thing you use it for. And they do support the Amazon device and Google Assistant and Siri. So I guess if the manufacturers update their devices to work that already work with Alexa, then a lot of that could be replicated. I noticed on Live 360, which is the app that I use to track where we are and update I mainly use it for having 2 teenage sons to make sure that they're okay, safe and everything. Because especially as they're going out and coming in later than I am now. But one of the things we use it for is arming and disarming the cameras. And I've noticed that if you go on the Live 360 site, it doesn't link to Arlo or anything, but it does link to Nest. So it looks like they're doing smart home integrations as well. So it could be that Arlo, if they linked in with the Alexa, then that would be something that I could control through that. So it seems like I can replicate a lot of stuff sort of manually. The one thing that just can't get to work currently, though, I need to try and fix, is this issue with the motion sensor. I can create the routine, test the routine, and it doesn't work, but I did get the announcement to work as well. So when I test it, this is not in practice, in theory, but when I use the announce function to say there's someone at the front door, and of course you can control that with times and things like that. So if I get that working, that'll actually be better than I'm using already. So I guess there was ways around it, but it just it's a shame because it's been the one piece of software that you can rely on to glue everything together. So when you pick, if you were going in the shop, you look at it supports Alexa and it supports Google and it's got the IFTT thing. You think, well, okay, it's going to work with my setup. Now that's not necessarily the case because, maybe $1.99 for a month for 12 months is okay, but if they put it up to $9.99, which I suspect they will, it's just it's more than Netflix and it's a lot of money, and I'm using kind of these play things really. That's not, but then I'm using for security as well. So if you've invested thousands in your smart home, I suppose maybe they think that you'll pony up for the $9.99. It just feels a bit like, oh, well, now we're going to take this away from you and we're back to all siloed services. And even if there was a great competitor, how long before that can get the market share of all the hooks in all the devices? So it's not... I think had they gone for, say, 10 applets or 20 applets or anything, between 10 and, or if it was 10, let's say, as the minimum, then I'd be quite happy. And I've probably done what you would have done. I've got, I quite like this conditional one. I can make the lights flash, at a certain time. If I'm in the house, I can add this. So I could add the conditional things, which I've always wanted to do. So maybe I would look at it. But $9.99 a month, which is what I suspect they'll do, it just seems a bit excessive. And it's just the fact that I don't know how advertising standards work, but these things, when you buy these things, they've got the labels on it. They don't say you have to pay extra, and then that's something on from you buy something because it's got that logo on, and suddenly that's an extra 10 quid. Is that something that the manufacturers are going to have to put stickers over these things pretty quickly, or I don't know.
I suppose they'd argue that the recipes that you get from the manufacturers are free still. Yeah. They're still within that list unless you modify them. But then again, who wouldn't modify them? So I don't
think I've ever used any of the preset ones because they don't do anything. Do it? You always want to link to something else. That's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it seems Stringify was a great service that worked really well, and it's just gone.
Yeah,
and it's a great competitor because that linked all the devices as well. So maybe that's another reason why they're doing this. But I've seen a lot of tweets today when I asked the question. A lot of people are just saying that. So I haven't come across anybody yet that's going to pay the $9.99, but maybe they don't need that many people to pay for it.
Yeah. I mean, people would have paid for the Pro service. I'm sure people would have paid $4 or $5 a month for the Pro service because it gave more functionality, and probably people would have paid $1 or $2 for over 10 events, and then the vast majority of people who only have 2 or 3 or 4. So apparently, someone was telling me the average is around about 4 to 5 custom events that people have. So those people would have been okay anyway. So I just think they've done it well. And these things in the smart home world, these things have a tendency of being pushed out there and then pushed back fairly quickly. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen here, if the pushback, because the pushback has been fierce, especially from some of the manufacturers. So I think this could be interesting. I mean, again, Ifttt have to find somewhere funding this. But I do feel it's wrong that they're charging both ends of the circle here, or ends of the line here. So
yeah. So seems like hopefully we might see a bit of maybe an easy thing for them to do would be just to increase that 3 applets up to 5 or 10 and probably placate people quite well. But I know, Richard, it's not something you use because you've kind of had issues with it, but I guess it's just another one of those sort of services that we've been using, being dragged from underneath our feet.
Yeah, I think so. It's not exactly unusual, is it, to see these things being charged? It's just a real shame. And I think Gary's right, particularly in the way it's been done. I think that's, I don't think anybody would object to a charge for the service because, you've got to pay for the server time somehow. But I just think the way it's done feels icky.
Yeah, that's good description.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. So whether we'll see some competitors coming up, but I think that's difficult, or whether we'll see some pushback, I don't know. But like I said, I've already gone down to 3 applets now, and I may well stick with 3 applets. Of course, the other thing that they don't actually, you can have, if you've got multiple email accounts, I don't know what's to stop you having multiple 3 accounts. Don't think there's anything in the terms and conditions about that, but your mileage may vary or whatever. But
actually, well, I do have multiple accounts anyway because I have multiple places I run it at, which works better that way. So there isn't anything in terms and conditions about that. But I mean, that's another point. I'd have to pay 3 subscriptions if I actually wanted to use it for those things.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I have 2 accounts to test it. I mean, for something like my Smart Buttons app, which I created for Windows 10, I only did it just as a bit of a project for doing the UWP app. But if you wanted to use that, you could only use 3 buttons. You can't have the 8 buttons. You can have 3 buttons or nothing, or you pay $99.99. Yeah, so that's a bit of a thing. I've seen a lot of people ranting about that, but hopefully there's some other alternatives, and I think the more devices that get the big players like the Amazon and the Google and the Siri support, then that Ifttt kind of goes away, really. That's one thing. They could push themselves into obsolescence.
They could, yeah. Other services have gone that way.
Okay, well, we'll stick on the smart home topic. I know, Gary, you looking at some new locks.
Well, not really new. I mean, this is Nuki. I've talked about Nuki before now. These are the devices you can attach to virtually any door, and they effectively turn the key for you, which is quite a nice way of working. They work with most types of locks. There are some they don't work with, but most cylinder type locks, particularly Euro cylinders, they work really well with. And there are some restrictions on the type of keys and things you can work with them, but they're really good. But they've had 2 sort of not flaws, but interesting bits. One is that they're battery powered, and they suffer from the same problems we've been talking about with battery power. They tend to they eat AA batteries, not quite as fast as some of the sensors, but they do eat them, especially if you've got a lot of people going in and outdoors regularly. I can imagine the traffic at your house here would soon burn through them. So one of the things they've just recently announced is they've actually got a battery pack, and they say this battery pack, rechargeable battery pack, would only needs recharging once every year to year and a half, which would be really good. So that's a definite improvement. Nice to see that. The other thing which I'm really pleased they've done, because these things have been typical Ford Motor Company. You can have it in any colour as long as it's black. So they've come in a fairly industrial black colour, which hasn't really suited well for things like French doors, sort of the UPVC white doors. They just don't look very good against them. So they've actually launched a white version of it, which I think actually is a big step forward. I really like Nuki. I think the way they've done their security, the way they've done their app, the presence sensing on them just works really, really well. So that they solve a lot of the issues around locks. That they are very secure. That they work on a protocol which really talks to the phone directly. So there is a hub you can use as well, so you can monitor them remotely. They do integrate into Amazon's device, although not to unlock, because that would be a bit dodgy, because you can shout through the letterbox to unlock your dog, which would not be good. But you can monitor what's going on the state, and they also trigger events in the Amazon world as well. So you can actually get if someone opens the door, you can get an event triggered, which is quite a nice option as well. So they're well thought through. They're not that expensive. They work well with most doors. So. And they have become, I think, the #1 supplier of smart locks in Europe, which I'm not surprised by, because they were a good device. At my flat, I actually use their opener system, which allows you to control the sort of flat door opening system. You know, these multi-button things you get on first side flats, and that actually has an option which I can do sort of hands-free entry into the flat as well. So it will detect using my phone with a secure line to tell the flat to buzz me in effectively, which is really quite clever. Yeah, so the good things, and it's good to see they're actually they haven't taken away from what they already got. They've just done some iterative stuff, but I was actually quite impressed with what I saw with their launch. Excellent.
Right. Well, okay. So next thing that I wanted to talk about we've got some Windows Insider news. Before I get to that, there was an Apple event today, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Oh yeah, there was.
Was it super exciting? Will Jason be firing up his checkbook?
You know what? It was one of the best Apple events ever, and I'll tell you why. There was no fanboy whoopings going on. It was incredible. I thought this is how everything should be, really. It was just a case of just the devices. Yeah. So, yes, this is, of course, the Apple event. I think you can probably safely say it's the warm-up event for the iPhone event later on, which obviously where they launch, I presume, the 5G iPhone and whatever else. So this is more about Apple Watch and iPads, I think.
Yeah.
So we saw basically the Apple Watch Series 6, which is, again, the Apple Watch you've all grown to know and love, except a bit faster, a bit more powerful, better screen, more options. It's one of those things you think, yeah, it's all good stuff. It's got nice things in there. It does have a blood oxygen sensor in there now, which I think Apple seemed to make out was a wonderful innovation. But of course, we do know that Samsung and Co have been doing that for some time now, so it's not that new.
My watch does it as well.
Exactly. It's not exactly I think the days of Apple being particularly innovative are quite somewhere in their past now. But it's good to see it appearing there. It's a shame, I think, that there's still no blood pressure sensor. I mean, that's what I'm looking for in these watches. I mean, blood oxygen is good. It's handy to have. It's a useful measure, especially now. But equally, I think if you've got many long-term conditions, it's actually very useful to track blood pressure long-term as well. And that's something which the makers haven't yet worked out really how to do particularly reliably yet. I think
so Samsung have done it, but I think you do need to calibrate it every 3 months.
You got to calibrate it with a cuff device, because I did look into that last week, and it needs calibration. It's software based. From what I can see, it seems to be relatively reliable if you do the calibration, but again, I've not had a chance to get hands on one, but that's kind of where I'd like to see smartwatches going. Particularly ones like Apple are pitching the Apple Watch here. They're now fairly and squarely pitching it directly at the fitness market, because they've unveiled some subscriptions, of which one I think is Apple Fitness Plus or something, where it'll take the fitness metrics that come out of the watch and give you programs around sort of yoga and other exercise and things on top of what the thing could do before. But again, you've got to pay for that. I believe it's about $10, $9.95, whatever a month, I think.
Yeah.
So that's, and of course we'll get into the Apple services in a minute. One interesting thing they have done though, which I think is a fair and square shots fired thing, is they have introduced the Apple Watch SE, which is the simple, the cheaper version. I think it starts at $279. I'm not quite sure what the UK pricing for that's going to be, but that's interesting because that's kind of, I mean, the iPhone SE, for example, is I think, quite a steal at the moment, because it's getting a relatively inexpensive introduction into the iPhone, the Apple ecosystem, and it's quite a good bit of hardware. Even though, you know, we're saying a phone that costs that much money is entry level for Apple. Obviously, it's mid range or premium for most other people, but it's still an interesting take. So I think, yeah, they could well be doing the same thing with the SE. Whereas I think, was it the Series 3 that was the cheap watch before? So the SE, I think, has got a whole bunch of new, a whole bunch of improved hardware in it. So I think that's quite interesting. But yes, I think the big news is obviously the fitness service, and Apple One, where they're going to bundle various things in. So you can have, I think, is it the individual Apple One service? It costs $15 a month, and for that you get music, TV, games, and the Apple Cloud storage, I think. Family, which is kind of, you can add more people to it, I guess, similar to Microsoft's approach with the Family Microsoft 365 solution, for $20 a month. Again, music, TV, games, and cloud. And then I think the Premier, which is $30 a month. I mean, these are large amounts of money for people.
Yeah.
I think. And then again, it contains the stuff that the other two have got, as well as the fitness bits and pieces. And I think it's news, is it, as well? Again, this is all just happened, so please excuse me if I'm not quite on the page here, but that just looks like a heck of a lot of money to me for that, you know, per month for those services. I mean, I know Apple users are well used to spending money, and I've been harangued many times by Apple fans who insist it's not really expensive because it's all about the service and the hardware and how wonderful it is. But that seems like a lot of money compared to how much, say, you know, Office 365 costs for a family. It just seems like a huge amount of money.
It does.
So, but I mean, you can be sure that obviously the faithful will go and pay that monthly fee for it, because they just will. I don't see that tempting anyone else. And of course, it's not cross-platform. I think it's a shame that Apple TV isn't really cross-platform. I know it works on some Roku devices, but it's not really a cross-platform service. So I think that's kind of interesting to see where that goes. And the games subscription, I think, is interesting because that's come kind of on the eve of, I think, is it xCloud launches?
Yeah.
Or tomorrow?
Yeah.
So again, there's your Apple Arcade subscription there. So it's all the timing is all very interesting. It does look expensive, though. I have to say, it does look very, very pricey, and it doesn't look particularly good value. I mean, that $14.95, $19.95 a month. I mean, Spotify and Netflix, I don't know. It just seems like you'd be paying those on top, wouldn't you? So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it just looks expensive.
The other interesting thing was obviously there's a whole bunch of new iPads, I think, came out as well, which with new chips, and I think iPad Air gets the A14, and also USB-C.
Yay!
At long last, USB-C has turned up, so that's I think that's interesting. And also it's got Touch ID, which has been moved to the top of the thing. I think is it on one of the buttons now, Touch ID, which kind of put me in mind of my Samsung Galaxy. So
yeah,
which is, you know, I think that's interesting to see that's moved up. They've kind of backed away from putting Face ID on everything.
Well, yeah, I think Face ID was what they were going, the direction they were going until March.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm going to be very interested to see what they do with the iPhone, because, you know, they've put a colossal amount of sort of investment into Face ID, and at the moment, I mean, until the early part or middle of next year at the earliest, we're all going to be in masks, aren't we? Let's face it. You know, whatever your stance is on masks or not masks, they're going to be mandated. So it's. I mean,
you know what they come up with, the Apple mask that works with Face ID.
What did they not have? They not done the Apple mask for Apple Store people? Did you see that?
They have actually. They have. Yeah.
So there will be the Apple mask, I'm sure, which will be wonderfully unique and cost an immense amount of money, I'm sure. So. Yeah, I do wonder if the mask wearing thing might be the nail in the coffin, because Face ID, frankly, I've always thought it was rubbish. So I've got an iPhone XS, and it's just it's a terrible way of looking at a phone. And I mean, my cynical suspicion is the only reason it's got it is because Apple couldn't make the thumbprints work on the screen properly, because otherwise it's just. I mean, even the most ardent apologists can't really say, look, it's wonderful, but you've got to look at the phone at a certain angle. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work sideways on the iPhone. It works sideways on the iPad. Why is that? Who knows? It's so I'm going to be very interested to see what they do. Whereas I think this thumbprint approach they've taken for the iPad Air for the iPad Air makes much more sense. I think the other really interesting thing I think was the base iPad itself. And as you know, I bought one of those a few months back, and I have to say, I mean, it goes for $329, just under £300 in the UK, and it was a good little device as it was then. I mean now it's been given the A12 chip, so it's had an update, and I think that's probably the most interesting thing in that whole show for me. It's because that's really cements Apple's dominance of the tablet market. Because I mean, you can buy an Android tablet for a bit less, but that iPad is actually that's a good bit of kit for not a bad price, really.
Yeah, I think the issue with Android, I got the Samsung tablet S, whatever it is, a couple of years ago, old now, and I very rarely use it. Well, I don't really use an iPad either, but I can understand why people use an iPad, because it's still a better experience than Android. Android I prefer on a phone, but when you get Android onto a large screen, it just seems like every app is just a big version of the phone. And now having the Galaxy Note, I've already got a big phone, so I don't really need a bigger phone. So yeah, I think that's probably why I think the iPad is probably the best solution for tablet. Because although for me, you know, a Windows tablet works better. I know I'm an unusual case for that. So I think if I was, you know, an iPad is good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I'll be honest. You know, the best tablet experience I've ever had was the original Surface RT, which I thought was brilliant. I thought the interface was wonderfully fluid. Fluid. It worked really, really well. I love the active tiles. You know, the apps that were designed for it worked really well. It just obviously, you know, it floundered, but it was a great bit of kit. That was. I do miss that in many ways, but say la vie. But I mean, obviously there is Microsoft's own take on the latest kind of tablet thing in terms of Surface Duo, which has begun to appear. So
yes. Oh, that's even better than a Mercedes AMG gear shifter.
That was really impressive, I must say. Yeah,
that was the first.
Lewis Hamilton going down the straight there.
No, I think that was actually an EV gear shift.
Oh yeah, continual varying torque.
Well, not even that. No, it's just torque all the way through.
Yeah. Well, that is
rubber cone is what you say.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen quite a few of the reviews of the Surface Duo, and yes, they've been mixed. I think the general consensus seems to be fantastic hardware, shame about the software.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be a little bit buggy at the moment, but of course it's Gen 1, isn't it? It's Generation 1. I think we said at the time, you know, let's wait and see what Gen 2's like. So, I mean, it is well, I would have said good hardware until I saw the iFixit teardown, and perhaps I'm less convinced about the hardware as well now. But certainly, it's yeah, I mean, it does look a great device. It's just even the most ardent fans have gone, oh, it's okay, it's all right. So I think it needs work, but I'm sure they'll get there if Microsoft doesn't do its thing of doing two versions and giving up. That's what I hope. I hope they'll do a proper Surface.
Yeah,
and
I think if it gets to version 3, then you're safe.
Exactly, yeah, but yeah, I mean, the teardown unfortunately was pretty damning, really. I mean, I know it kind of was par for course with the other foldables out there, but I was really happy because Microsoft had taken such a different approach to the foldable in having two distinct sort of sides to it. I was hoping it might be a bit more fixable, because of course the key thing with all these devices is the battery. The battery will die, and it looks to me as though they've designed this device in such a way that you can never change that the battery can't be done by a pro. It's got to be, you know, it's almost throwaway, which when you're talking about, you know, a device that costs that much money, you really, you know, and we know the effect batteries have on these devices when they start to fail. You would hope there'd be a way of keeping it going a little bit longer, but it seems that it's unless there's something special that Microsoft stores can do, but of course they've closed all the Microsoft stores. Doesn't seem to be much you can really do. You know, your backstreet sort of phone battery. I mean, for example, I got an old iPhone fixed this week, and the battery change cost me £30-40, and it's now transformed. It's like a new phone again, and that's a phone that's 5-6 years old. And I'd like to be able to do that if I had a Surface Duo. To expect that I could do that as well, but
Yeah,
you can't.
not going to happen. No, I mean, I think it's the same on many of the other foldables, isn't it? Even some of the new Samsungs are like that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, yeah,
I was going to say it's not even just a foldable thing. This isn't. This is a Surface thing, isn't it? I mean, Surfaces are notoriously difficult to.
Well, I mean, kind of. I mean, the thing is, the Surfaces have definitely been improving over the years.
Yeah.
And they've. I mean, if you look at the latest Surface laptop, the latest Surface Pros, they've made an effort to make, to actually. I mean, I hope it's an effort. It's not just criticism, but they are a bit better than they used to be, and I think many phones are better than. I mean, even the iPhone is better than it used to be, but the foldables in particular, they are bad, and I understand why they're bad. I was just so hoping that Microsoft, having gone down their own particular path, had done something different, and they, I mean, I don't begrudge the rest of the thing, not being fixable, because of course it's so slim, it will be on a board, and if one component goes, it's all dead. That's fine, I understand that, but it's just a battery, and also, if I'm honest, I really wish it was a bit more waterproof as well. But say la vie.
Yeah, Gen 2.
Yeah. Hopefully that's when they get. I mean, like I said last week, I would have if they'd been available in the UK, I would have got one instead of the Samsung. But it didn't seem worth importing it, and I think my hand being forced slightly means I've probably got a cheaper and better phone, really. But I still love the way that the dual screen looks, and it has some nice, interesting use cases. But it would be something to play with rather than being a business need for it, from my case. But I think when we get to the second gen, then that looks really interesting, because just the little things like the NFC, it's just, I use it all the time now for payments. I never carry cash. I don't even like carrying a wallet anymore. If you go to the shop, especially I've been doing a lot of walking in the lockdown, you don't want to carry a wallet around. And if you just nip into a shop, everywhere use NFC now. So without that, you've got to carry a card, or use a Wear OS device with Android, with Google Pay, because the Samsung Pay on the Samsung Watch doesn't work with my bank. It's all that kind of thing. So it would have been a lot easy. It's a lot easier with the phone.
You need an iOS device.
Yeah, don't want an iOS device. This works. This works perfectly. I tell you what, this Note is working really well for me. It's so fast and smooth and everything. The camera's fantastic on it, and the pen for OneNote works great. I've stopped, if I go into a meeting that's going to be a relatively short meeting, I don't even bother taking a laptop in now. I just take notes on my phone with the pen. It's brilliant. So,
these is a lot cheaper than a phone.
Yeah, I remember you had.
Remember my little McClear ring, and now they've taken away the premium to top it up. It's great.
Well, speaking of foldable phones and things, did you guys see the LG Wing?
That looks. It reminded me of those.
It made me think of the spaceship of the Terror from the Tick.
Yes.
The Amazon. Oh my! It's the Terror come to get me, but it's actually LG's swivel smartphone.
Yeah.
What was when Windows Mobile was just taking off? There was a whole, we didn't just used to have the old slabs. We had different form factors, didn't we? It reminds me of that kind of thing at that time when Windows Mobile, I think it was 6.5, wasn't it? You could get it with, some with the tilt-out screens, some twisted. So they had all different form factors, and it kind of reminded me of that a bit.
Yeah, nothing like this though. Oh, it's quite strange.
It is very strange.
But
they covered it. They covered it in the Ifttt press launch. I didn't actually mention it last week because it was sort of like, oh, this is coming, maybe.
Exactly. I was quite surprised. Yeah, I was listening. I thought he's not mentioned it. He's not mentioned it.
Yeah. I was actually more taken with the wrap-round screen they were demoing as well, which was very impressive. But which was really wrapped around it. Actually, sort of all the way around inside the phone, and still had text at the back bit of it as well. Very, very strange. Can't really see the use case of it, but then again, I can't really see the use case of this one either, unless you want to fly a spaceship.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, or swat a fly. But but one of the points I want to make about it is this is one of the things that again the Duo's lacking. This thing is, when it comes out, and it will be out in, at some point, you've got a 64 megapixel camera, you've got 5G, you've got all the bits which you can say, oh well, that's not what the Duo is designed for, but these specs are actually quite important, and I think again, if you're purchasing a device, an investment for just going to last you 3 years, maybe even longer, then you need to have some of this
Yeah.
basic tech in
Yeah.
there. So generation 2.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Right. What else did we have? Oh, we were talking about iOS and stuff. Did you know? Did you see that you can, with the new iOS, you can have Edge as your default browser now?
You can, yeah.
So Jason will be happy with that.
Yeah.
He probably won't change it though. He loved his Safari, didn't he? So.
But of course, it's still the same basic browser.
Yeah, it's just a shell.
It's just a shell around it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have Edge as the default browser on the Note, and it works great. So it syncs up with everything really well. Oh, and talk about syncing up. I didn't put these notes, but you remember when we talked about I did loads of testing with the cloud clipboard, the Windows key and V, and it never worked ever. Last week it started working on a couple of devices. So just 2 of my devices have started syncing.
Yeah, it did for me as well. All of a sudden, it was like,
yeah.
I think they listened to the show and realised they hadn't turned it on.
Yeah, maybe that was it. So turning it in Garry's on then. But, yeah, I don't know why. So one was on release preview, one was on release preview, one was on fast ring, and they've kind of all just started to sync. But one of the other devices just didn't sync with it. So only the text, not the images. But so it's the first time I've seen that working because we've got the new keyboard working now on the Insider preview build. In fact, if you got, when last week I mentioned that I had to kind of fudge it to get the keyboard on. Well, they've in build 20211 that was released last week, the new keyboard seems to be on by default. So you get the new emoji panel and you get the new input panel and the voice input panel. It's a nice improvement actually. So especially if you're using it in tablet mode, so it's quite good on the Surface Go. A little keyboard. Other than that, I don't think 20211 had many changes. I'm trying to think of. I did do a build video of it, but I don't think there was.
Oh, there were some big ones in it. Yeah, there were 20211. Yeah. Windows Subsystem for Linux.
Yes.
Found these storage devices, wasn't it? Non-native storage devices like EX4 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean this is big. If you're a Windows Subsystem for Linux fan, they offer that. So basically, you can, if you mount, it's again, Garry, please dive in anytime I get if we're playing off beat here. But basically, if you go into WSL2, you mount a Linux disk, which could be ext4, which isn't compatible with Windows. Then when you go back, when you're in the File Explorer in Windows, that appears beneath whatever you've got your little penguin for your WSL2 distro in File Explorer. So you can access the files that you would not have been able to access before. So it's actually, yeah, I'd say that's. I mean, that was actually plugged quite heavily at the WSL Conf, which happened I think last week. I want to say. I think that was a Canonical sponsored conference, which I think the sessions will be up on YouTube, and it had the WSL team and other, I think also Docker were there and some other, obviously Ubuntu were there as well. It's worthwhile catching up on those on YouTube, but yeah, that was one of the functions that they trailed, and the next day it appeared in Windows. So yeah, I'll say that's probably the big 20211 thing in there. I mean, there were a few oddities. Although one thing, I don't know if you get this in, but whenever I install a flight, I have to do a .NET update every single time.
Yeah,
it's gone, fixed. Hooray!
But that's the good news. The bad news is they've pulled this build, haven't they?
Well, no, you can still get 20211, can't you? It's the, isn't it the?
No, 202.
Okay,
I think 20211 is the one they pulled. I'll just double check. Yeah. Oh, they've.
I thought it was the update, the 20211.1005 they pulled.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because that caught me out on Friday because I'd obviously done the update before that, and then they said, oh, there's another update. This is a thing where they were trying to test their service.
No, they still pulled it.
They pulled the whole lot, did they?
Yeah, it says, thanks to reports Windows Insiders, who reported the issues installing this update. We have discovered a bug that requires us to pull the update for now while we continue to investigate. And they haven't crossed that out, so that's what they added on Friday. So I think they're still pulled.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
So, so if you didn't get this build at the time, then you're not going to get it now. So I guess they'll ship a new build this week, which includes a fix for whatever there was in that one.
Cool.
There was also some other updates last week, wasn't there? It was Patch Tuesday, I think, wasn't it? So I think, or was that the Tuesday before? No, it was last Tuesday, wasn't it?
We were talking about it. Yes, last Tuesday.
Yeah, we talked about that patch as well. Now, something else I did spot that was quite interesting. Did you see that somebody has made a ZX Spectrum emulator in C#?
Yeah.
Which looks really good, actually. And because it's got the source code in there, because it's on GitHub as well, you can actually look how they did it as well. So if you're curious and you can follow a bit of C#, then check that out, because it's quite interesting how they've done that. So I think it's entirely written in C# with Blazor for the as well.
Yeah, it's very clever. Actually, some kind of stuff in there. It's worth a look.
Yeah. So if you want to get, because I think I've been using Fuse and a few others, but if you're a .NET developer, then you can have a look at the source code for that as well. So well worth checking out and firing up Match Day, my favorite Spectrum game. Now, moving technology slightly, Garry, you had an update for us on something that you were asking about at London Tech Week.
Yeah, so last week was the UK London Tech Week, and I was chatting around EV stuff and self-driving cars and battery stuff, and I got found out that the UK Research and Innovation government body has been funding a few bits and pieces, and I sort of inquired a bit more on this, and I actually got a couple of statements. We've got government statements on the show tonight. So this is breaking news. I don't think anybody else has got this. So the three things I was talking about were their project to drive the electric revolution, which is all about the core technology behind electric vehicles. The Faraday Battery Challenge, which I think we may have mentioned previously before, but this is the challenge to improve batteries in the UK and turn UK into the sort of the equivalent production of maybe a Tesla megafactory, producing batteries, gigafactory. And then the third branch of this was the self-driving car element, autonomous vehicles, and it was quite interesting actually. So this UKRI is the people who actually control all the money for these sort of projects. They're the people who actually control all the science and innovation budgets which are pushed out. So the stuff which goes out to universities and the like to research and do research development, including some of the space program as well, Richard. So you probably come across them in some of the stuff they've done. And I got a few comments from these people. So the first person I got a comment from was a guy called Mark Urbanowski, which is a great name because he's responsible for the industrialisation centres in the UKRI. And he was talking about the core technologies underpin electrification, and they class this as PEMD, that's power, electronics, electric machines and drives. And he says that the Driving the Electric Revolution Challenge funded by UKRI aims to catalyse the UK's ability to deliver the next generation of electric vehicles, whether on land, sea or air. I love the idea of electric air vehicles, industrial machines and energy generation systems. So this is absolutely key to the UK's net zero approach to climate change and reducing emissions. He says that they've invested £80 million so far into PMD research and development, and they want to ensure they have a skilled and diverse and effective workforce in this field. And this is actually a challenge that they're doing. So the challenge winners projects will support work being completed in the UK, and they will also be hopefully exporting overseas as well. So interesting stuff that they're actually doing now. Probably more interesting for our audience is this whole work around connected and autonomous vehicles. And Ian Forbes, the head of the centre for that, commented that the UK is actually a leading connected and automated vehicle innovation specialist market. They've worked out the market is around $907 billion pounds by 2035. And so it's $907 billion market, and they're investing £28 million to fund this research, which may be a little bit lacking. But he also said the automated vehicles have the potential to transform the way people and goods move around the UK, and obviously this has the option will reduce air pollution and carbon emissions. And there's a few trials which have been going on. So Streetwise provide a commuter service between Croydon and Bromley in 2019. This is fully autonomous. They actually had autonomous vehicles, and it was thought to be one of the most complex AV trials completed in public in Europe to date. And it provided indispensable feedback, I reckon. And the other project, this is one I'm kind of really interested in, is Robo Pilot. This is basically led by Arrival, you may have heard of. This is what's classed as a technology unicorn. It's one of these privately held companies which has got over $1 billion in funding. And they are producing automated electric vehicles, electric vans and electric trucks, but they're also very heavily into automation. And UPS are going to start using them in South Gloucester this year to provide fully autonomous depot operations. Which is an interesting step. So I was thinking, your point of view, Ian, from what you do in your factory, you could have all these little vans running around your buildings, delivering things from one building to another, all autonomous.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite interesting. And the final element on this is the Faraday Battery Challenge, which is one I'm particularly interested in. And Tony Harper, who's the challenge director for that, said that they are outperforming international enterprises in terms of getting commercial investment. They aim to accelerate the advancement of the emerging and next generation technologies, including this new UK Battery Industrialisation Centre, UK BIC, if you ever hear about that, which is the first kind of. Well, this is something that was announced in the press not so long ago. They reckon there's going to be 1.5 million electric vehicle batteries being produced per year by the year 2040. I actually think it's going to be more than that. So they reckon they need 7 UK battery manufacturing facilities the size of a gigafactory to do this, which is that's a lot of batteries. It's an awful lot of batteries. So yeah, I think, and the thought here is it will generate around 78,000 jobs in the UK, and they reckon this is only the start, because they're talking about aerospace, rail and marine all looking to electrify. So there's going to be a huge amount of battery work going on. So I just thought it was really interesting that some of these investments going on, but it's the scale they're talking about. I mean, Tesla only got 2 gigafactories. They just went the third one online, and they're talking about 7 of that sort of scale in the UK. So that's a huge shift in jobs potentially and the like, but it has to happen. I mean, we know we need innovation batteries, and there's some really clever stuff going on in that world. So I think it's a case of watch this space, and are we keeping on these people to see what these projects are doing, and hopefully we might be able to get some of them on the show at some point to talk about some of the innovation which is happening, particularly around some of the new battery technology, because it has knock-on effects. I mean, it's not just talking about electric vehicles here. Some of the stuff they're doing will be trialled on phones first. So we've already talked about some of the very quick charge options. So potentially the idea of a phone you could charge in a couple of minutes to full, rather than waiting hours to charge, even potentially wirelessly, and also potentially have a lot longer battery life in the same space. Now this isn't anything to do with this, but I don't know if you saw the other day, and this one I quite like the concept of. There's a battery made of nuclear waste.
And it's going to last a while.
Well, that's the point. It's supposed to last almost the lifetime of the product, so you never have to charge the product. Yeah, and they are trialing this with phones, so that there is going to be a phone sometime next year which will be powered by sealed with nuclear waste. They say it's very safe. They do say it's very safe.
Well, I know that that's something that Bill Gates was looking at when he was building reactors from the waste, so that the ground that would turn the waste into neutral. I mean, the components. Yeah.
You can certainly see this as a possibility, because they don't need very much of this to provide an awful lot of power, as long as they can do it safely. And obviously, it will last a long time. So
just don't drop your phone.
Phone run. Make your local battery repair shop work hard, wouldn't it?
Try 30 quid at your Apple store for that one.
Yeah, don't try it Surface Duo nuclear.
Yeah, it's interesting that. So Yeah, there's a lot of innovation going on in that, and I hope they can just put that to some good use so we can actually capitalise on some of the skills that we've got and the innovations that
I mean, we've always been an innovative country. You've only got to look at what we've done in automotive over the years, and I think we will be at the forefront of a lot of this stuff. It's just it needs kick-starting sometimes in the universities and that other places where they need to fund that money into, and I mean, people always talk about wasted money on research because a lot of research goes to nothing, but that's the point. You do research to find the one thing which does go to something, and some of this stuff is working out, and certainly some of the autonomous trials seem to have been far more successful than I thought they would be, and yet we haven't heard much about them. So that's an intriguing thought.
And we probably really haven't got time to talk about the ARM video cell. Maybe Richard, we can catch up on that next week, because I think that's as its pros and cons, I think, but most people seem to be pretty upset with the potential losing a British company like that to an American organisation.
It's not a British company; it's a Japanese.
Well,
it's
based in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, it's. I think the bigger concern around the NVIDIA ARM thing is, as I said, the ARM ship has sailed. Like Garry said, the ARM ship has sailed a long time ago. It's more down to ARM supposedly being very independent, and of course, it's in theory going to be sold to a company that uses its designs and competes with other companies that uses ARM's designs. So it'll be very interesting to see how they reassure the regulators there's not going to be any issues of competition. I think it's going to be a one to watch over the long term.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. Right, well, I think that's just about all the time we've got for this week. So, Garry, where can we find you and your chat of EV and your channels?
All that stuff. Well, if you follow me on Twitter at Garry WMA, I'll point you in all the right directions. And most of the stuff I do on the iPad 7 channel.
And your new profile picture that looked like you were auditioning for Red Dwarf.
Yes, indeed.
The new ship computer for Red Dwarf. And Richard, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Richard_Speed.
And down your fast Ethernet cabling.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, excellent. Right, well, I'm going to go and see if I can disable some more of my IFTTT routines and find some alternatives. And we're back same time, same place next week. You can email me in@thislifestyle.com. So we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Cheerio.
Thanks to Richard and Garry. We'll be back same time, same place next week. You can email me in@thislifestyle.com. I'm @IronSticks on Twitter. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.